I'm Meghan DeFord.
And I'm Richard Tolafera.
Welcome to our new coaching series. We're both coaches and we're teaming up to have the kind of conversations we have with our clients. The sometimes messy, always meaningful, what now questions we all face.
In each episode, we'll take on a question or challenge about work, purpose, and all the spaces in between.
Think of it like the show Frasier, but with less neuroses and more real-world coaching.
So let's dive in. Hi, Meghan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Richard, how are you?
I'm good. It's warming up here in New Jersey, so I'm very happy about that.
Amazing. And I'm excited because we're meeting your friend, Tom, today.
Yes, my old friend, Tom Davidson. And we've known each other since really I was in high school, late in high school. And Tom's a career coach who helps job seekers and career changers in the natural resources industry get off the application and resume bot treadmill. He's a longtime podcaster, executive coach, and leadership trainer. And before that, he had a long career in the forest products industry, where he worked his way up from field forester to vice president of human resources and organization management. And maybe most importantly, he was the scoutmaster of my local Boy Scout troop when I became an Eagle Scout. So, Tom, thanks for coming on today.
You're so welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
It sounds like we all need a Tom. That's a great resume.
Yes. We all do.
Yeah.
Tom's been a good friend of mine for a long time, and he really helped me sort of get things sorted when I decided to become a coach. So I'm forever grateful for that.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure, man. A real honor to even know you all these years, brother. Thank you.
Same here. Same here.
Can I ask a clarifying question before we dive into leadership? What is the natural resources industry?
Great. So almost everything outdoors.
Okay.
It was a narrower field when I went into the profession. There were fewer choices to going into the profession. There was basically forestry, wildlife, and parks and recreation. So that's probably a big enough umbrella, but that's an old umbrella. Today, it's carved up into multiple disciplines, dozens and dozens of disciplines. I'm not even sure what I would have chosen, if I went back today. But folks who work outdoors and get their boots dirty is one way I like to think of it.
And really, I'm guessing you're also talking about things like trail management and trail building, because I'm thinking of that because it's something close to my heart where I like to go out and hike. And so I always see people on the trails nearby, working on the trails, building new trails and maintaining those. So that probably fits into that category, I would guess.
Yeah, sure. Trail building, road building, fire line management. The part I was into, Meghan, was forestry, which is basically the cultivation, nurturing, continuous growth, long-term health of the forest resource itself, which takes in everything, under the forest canopy, from soils and roots, to small animals and large animals and everything in between. So the idea of managing the forest for its highest and best use, protecting its health for the long term.
Do you have a favorite type of tree?
Ooh, a tough one, right away. I always think when someone says that's a good question, the answer is not going to be as good. But I really love to see the exotic trees, interesting looking trees like Adar cedar, things like that. I'm probably most familiar with the growth of southern yellow pine trees, which is a broad category. But if you ask me a question about forestry, it's mostly going to have to do with pine trees.
Okay.
I could talk all day about them. A favorite tree. Wow. This is a fun side fact. I use all my scientific names from my forestry career as my passwords. Don't tell anybody.
Very interesting.
Cool. Yeah. And so, Tom, what we want to dive into today is what nature can teach us about leadership that hustle culture can never do. So can you give us your definition of what leadership is?
Yes. And what a cool idea that you have there, because I see things through the lens of nature, just as you see things through your original professions as well, right? And so when I notice things about organizations and people, I think about what's that like in nature? But leadership is influencing the productivity and well-being of a team toward a particular goal. And that takes in, of course, many facets. But I do think it's different from management, which is another nuance. You probably take 10 courses in college about that particular subject. But I heard a quote that has always stuck with me to define the two, to partially answer your question, maybe, is management is about hunting. See, it's a nature analogy already.
Hmm.
Management is about hunting a goal, hunting. Management is about hunting. And leadership is more about farming.
Mm.
So, I mean, you can kind of chew on that if you want to, but maybe the meaning is somewhat obvious that hunting is getting a goal, achieving a thing, bringing it home today. And leadership is a much longer term process.
Mm. And it really feels like in that analogy that hustle culture is more it is more aligned with the management definition of hunting, where you're sort of trying to trying to go out, find your food for the day
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
week, and and do and deal with it there versus you know leadership, which is more. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to bear fruit for those pine seeds that we planted when we were in Boy Scouts. It's going to take a long time to cultivate those and watch those grow.
I think that's a great comparison. The idea of cultivating something. One of the frustrating things for folks who move from a technical field, which I did, which we've all done, into a leadership role, which sometimes is a surprising shift, a more difficult shift than people expect it to be,
Mm.
is getting used to the idea that you don't change things right away. You don't bring home, there was days when I remember I just want to go home and mow the lawn because
Yeah.
I can see the result.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when you're planting seeds and watering them and nurturing them and getting off track and bringing things back on track, the expression my dad used to use is like, he would say, leadership is like shoveling smoke.
Mm.
Getting people, it gets away from me. I always like that one.
Mm. And I mean, in that sort of case, it's sometimes the notions of leadership can be hard to capture.
Yes.
Like it's in your analogy of shoveling smoke, it's all over the place sometimes. And it's really hard to get a handle on.
Yeah. Which can be frustrating for people who like to get the handle on something, right? Hustle it, get it, nail it down, make something happen. It just doesn't happen that easily or that well. That's why there's a lot of kinds of leadership that can be effective in different situations. And knowing what those are, I think is a good idea for people who think about leadership.
Mm. And so in tying back into that, it's you have to know what kind of leadership you need at a particular time, I would imagine. And
Yeah.
so it's how do you get those reps? How do you get those reps? How do you build that understanding of when do you need to be an iron fist and when do you need to be a velvet glove?
Well, one thing you already talked about is, help talking to somebody who's been there before a little bit. Coaches help you think through a problem, look at the pros and cons. Mentors have been there and done that kind of thing. And some people need training. I think the main thing you need is the mindset of learning. That's a key competency for leaders, is that you're going to have to learn fast, that what you're doing isn't always going to work. It's going to be different in different situations. I'll go a little bit old school with you because my color of my gray hair is there was a time, and I know you know this, Megan, too, is that when organizations used to cultivate their future, leaders. And that was a time when we thought, oh, people are going to be in the company for 30 years or 35, go out with a gold watch. Everybody expected to kind of be there. And so what I got to experience to my great benefit was they'd move you around if you seem to have potential and they'd drop you into different situations and you bump your head a little bit, you scratch your knuckles, you get burned here and there, and all that learning The only way to get that was to drop you into different situations. And when you think about people doing career change, you can't just read a book about something or have somebody tell you something. You've got to feel it. You've got to experience. You've got to get a little bit of a bloody nose. And, that's one reason I like to say, hey, mistakes, we're all going to make them. Mistakes are for learning. And to be able to differentiate mistakes in learning and growing and learning what those situations are fit. There's a difference between mistakes, though, and misdeeds. I just think that's a critical point that I like to point out to, my friends and clients. A misdeed is when you've done something you shouldn't have done, when you should have known better and you broke a rule, you bent a rule, that kind of thing. A mistake is something where you're trying. Maybe you're putting yourself out there. Maybe you put the cart before the horse. Maybe you didn't know. You got to realize that sometimes you're going to make mistakes because of that. And if you learn from them, they're for learning. But that's different from a misdeed. You see in the news all the time, people say, hey, I just made a mistake. I'll go, no, that was a misdeed, my friend. And mistakes are for learning, misdeeds are for consequences. And we need to know that for ourselves, and we need to know that as good managers and leaders of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about that farming analogy, taking that in another step is, as leaders, yes, we are farming. And I was sharing as we were catching up before this, I grew up in a rural area and we had a garden, and I remember tilling the garden and all the effort you put into it, and, harvest, putting in the seeds, and, you wait a long period of time, and growing from a seed, you don't know if it's taken or not. So thinking about that farming analogy as a leader, when you are in a period of nurturing but not seeing results, how do you approach that? What are sort of the systems that you've used over the years that allow you to know you're going in the right direction, even when you're not necessarily seeing the results right away? If you're in a situation where you're getting some pressure, right? Like, hey, where's that corn? Like, where are the carrots? But how do you know you're on the right path when you can't necessarily see it? And when do you know, in your experience, that you might need to make some adjustments?
Right. I think the person's self-awareness is key about what's going well, what's not going well, how they take feedback is key. I think you need to, I like to say, take a person's pulse all the time for vital signs of, are they interested in this work? Do they like this work? Is there something else that they'd rather do more of or less of? And we don't always need to change a person's career or job. Sometimes we just need to give them a little bit more of what's motivating for them. So taking people's pulses, Megan, is, I think, important to know what do they really want? And sometimes they don't know.
Yeah.
We'll ask in interviews, hey, what motivates you? And they say, well, bringing home, getting the goals. And well, okay, really, it could be a lot of other things they might not even know. So I ask them for stories. Tell me about a time you really got out of bed in the morning, and we're rearing to go. Tell me about a time you just felt flat, the day was flat. And they can tell you what's motivating for them in their stories. That's one of the tools I use, Megan, is to find out what's really motivating them and then show it back to them. And they go, oh, yeah, you're right. When I get to be creative, when I get to try something new, when I get to fix a problem, man, I love that. They just give me the worst problem. And you go, see, you're telling yourself what's motivating for you. When people are motivated intrinsically, they're on a better path. Finding a little better, help them find a little better path. That's one tool I like to bring up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Tom, talking about those stories, how important do you think it is for us to tell the right stories to ourselves in order to be the best leader for our teams that we can be?
Wow. So I'll give you an example of, I think it's huge. So here's an example of why I think so. So folks in natural resources generally are pretty introverted folks. Yeah, they tell themselves these stories. I'm one, so I get to talk about us, right? And I've joked about it on the stage with, in different situations with what I like to say, my people in natural resources. And by the way, my people in natural resources, they understand my stories and they laugh at my jokes. That's the only way I know.
Okay.
But they tell themselves this story as an example. I'm not a good speaker, see. I'm not good with people, see. I'm not a good communicator. I just want to work with the trees and the roots and the flora and the fauna. and just leave me alone to do that, kind of thing. But our job is working with people. It just happens to be in the woods. And you can use this. I mean, it's the same parallel for everything else. So we tell ourselves this story as a profession, not just an individual, but as a profession. Tell ourselves the story. And guess what? It becomes true.
Mm-hmm.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And isn't that true for individuals too? We tell ourselves a story about not being a good communicator. Therefore, we don't polish that skill. Therefore, we don't share with the world, that kind of thing. So it's the mindset again. I say I help people with their mindsets and their skill sets, but the mindsets are first. So if you're telling yourself whatever story it is, I'm not successful, I'll never, whatever. I had a mindset about education, and my first coaching classes really, hit me in the face. I thought I needed more degrees. I'm not good enough for this coaching work until I have a PhD. And they gave us a book, The Gremlin Voice, the second voice in your head. Oh, Taming Your Gremlin. Terrific book. Little book. Anyway, the exercise was name your gremlin, the little voice in your head, the mindset, the stories you're telling yourselves. And so I was working in the class, right? I got a coach in the class, and I named my gremlin the professor. It's the professor talking about, I go, so that you can go, that story that I keep telling myself, the little voice in my head, you got to have more degrees and more certificates. So I got a pile of them, And my coach in the class says, at one point, just stops and says, hey, Tom, how many letters behind your name do you need on your gravestone?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Got me,
You're like 12, actually. No.
Yeah, 12 is the magic number. So I'm just saying guilty. We're all guilty of that storytelling, right? And it's good to be, called out on it in a totally supportive way, like we do with coaches. Yeah. So I probably riffed on that a little too long, but you got me going.
No, I love this, and Richard and I have talked about this a lot in terms of mindset and storytelling and narrative. And your example of the gremlin is an important one, not only identifying it, but I had a coach ask me, what is that gremlin or that voice protecting you from?
Ooh. Yeah.
And for me, the voice is this fear of visibility, which, by the way, is so bonkers. Rationally, I know I'm very visible. I have personally put myself out there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so I know it doesn't make sense, but when I asked myself that question of what is it protecting you from, that really cracked it open for me. And I went into that a little bit more. And now I'm able to get over that gremlin, almost like it sounded like your sort of breakthrough moment was, how many letters do you need on your gravestone? So thinking about that, I think, is so important. And the mindset narrative, I think, has gotten a bad rap. Richard and I recently did an episode on woo, and I'm not anti-woo. I talk to trees. Do they listen? I don't know, but I talk to them. So the thing is, I think mindset has gotten such a bad rap in recent years. If you just change your mindset, everything's going to fall into place. So it's mindset, but it's also taking action on the stories that we're telling ourselves and the narratives that we have. And you talked a little bit about this in terms of taking the pulse and motivation. But once you work with clients on that mindset, how do you get them on a different path? How do you get them on a road when sometimes that path is very deeply ingrained?
Well, it doesn't always pan out for them. Sometimes they do need to find something else that's, I like to say alignment.
Yes.
We're trying to align their motivation with their life and with their work. That alignment, things take off when things get aligned.
Yeah.
And helping them see the misalignment, discover it more than anything for themselves. To see, I had an executive coaching client that was brought in for his creativity, for example, just happened to be in a marketing company. And he was a genius marketer. And he was in a way, he showed up that way. He wore Hawaiian shirts and shorts and flip-flops to a corporate environment.
Sure.
Because that was his deal, his bag. That was his, what does he call it? His brand.
Yeah.
All right. So, but he kept running into problems with this. Yeah, I was like, it was a little bit too, creative and free talking and free dressing and everything. Hey, there's a culture here, that is not quite like that. So, so he just was pulling his hair out about it. The company was pulling his hair out about it. Get you an executive coach. Fortunately, this was one of those companies that valued executive coaching. The people who got an executive coach were honored and that kind of thing. There's other environments where you're in trouble if you get it. Maybe
Yeah.
some of your viewers don't, but it can be hard. Anyway, he valued this, so he was interested in discovering the best fit for him. And he discovered, he basically, by telling me the stories over and over again, why, well, when did that happen? What are they telling you? How does this make you feel? What did you do before when you were happy? Or, this thing. He said, you know what, maybe I don't fit here anymore. Well, if anybody was to say that to him like that, he would take offense to that. So I think I'm answering your question, Megan, in some way.
Yeah.
It was that self-discovering it wasn't a good fit. Well, and then he was, okay, I can fix this. See what I mean? Did it myself.
Yeah.
Did it myself in a corporate career. I just sat up in bed one night and said, so we need to move. I'll go in tomorrow and, we'll change things. And it was an aha moment. Let's get fit again. Once you get fit again, you're happy, you're more productive, you're better at your work. It's just a principle, something like a principle of physics.
Yeah.
And
Some people discover.
yeah. And Tom, you just mentioned aha moments, and when you work with clients and they discover those aha moments, those staying up at 3 a.m. in the bed going, okay, I know what I need to do. What have you noticed from those clients about how they feel when those aha moments hit?
Yeah, right. Scared
Oh.
and excited.
Mm.
What do I do now? Now that I know this, there's all these expectations too, right? Built up around their situations, our situations. Our ego gets tied up in our job title, expectations of what my job trajectory is. What do I do now? This, fear and excitement. Yeah, maybe fear mostly. Oh no, now that I know this, I can't unsee this.
Yeah.
What do I do about it? In another situation, the person just said, I just need to talk. I just need to go and talk to my boss and tell him the truth about this whole thing. You know what they did? They said, we love you, man. We so want you to stay here. We just think we promoted you too fast, or you said yes to the things that, he was a bench chemist and he got promoted to, pretty soon he was a vice president. He hated it. He hated the labor relations. He hated there was so much about it. He just couldn't tell anybody. He didn't know what to do, but he was afraid. I'm afraid. What do I do now? That I'll get fired, that, our brains go fast in these potential cataclysmic results. And they say, we love you, man. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Well, okay, now, wait a minute. What do you want to do? I thought I was about to get fired. And so I'd like to go back to the bench or do something in that field. Quality control? Would you? Yeah, but how about that? So, well, and they built a whole job for him that the company needed, and they kept him and he was happier. And oh my gosh, those are the days when we feel great about being a coach, right? We help them discover. And it doesn't always come out, rosy, like that. But enough times where I'm convinced this is a great thing.
Yeah. I worked with someone once who was promoted to lead an entire department. And after about 8 months, decided exactly what you said, like, this is not what I thought it was. This is not what I want to do. I don't think that they, like, from an external perspective, I thought they were doing a good job. But to your point, something inside of him was like, this is not aligned. And so he actually went back to his other job and helped transition his new boss. And that always stood out to me. I think your example is almost an even better example of coming up with, this new role. But there are so many expectations that we build in. And I think also, if we can talk a little bit about identity and how it's tied to titles. And I know I went through a huge identity unraveling, let's put it that way, from my work life. My work life was my entire life a few years ago. And after I was laid off from a job, I was like, who am I? I had given everything to this job, and it was all about the title, and that my self-worth was so wrapped up into that. So I'd love to hear from both Richard, you, and Tom a little bit more about that in terms of identity and title and work and expectations and all of that sort of bundled together. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, and Tom, you've seen some of this over the past couple of years where I've had to do a lot of unraveling of, who I was as a journalist in order for me to move forward as a coach. I had been in journalism in the field really since high school. So if you're in something that long, it really gets rooted into you. But also at the same time, I was, starting to look around, look at the industry and going, okay, I'm not sure if I want to stick around here that much longer. And so there's like this very underground shift that's happening that nobody but your closest friends sees. You tell your closest trusted friends, hey, I'm looking at doing this particular thing. I'm looking at going into coaching, but that's not something that you want to tip off the wider world to. So it's sort of living at certain points. I felt like I was living two lives, which is hard. And when the layoff finally came, I think it was traumatic, of course. And a couple of days later, I went, okay, I know what I need to do. I've been preparing for this for years, and okay, now it's time. I think the hardest thing was for me making this move public. Yeah. And Meghan, you talked about visibility. It was, and to a certain extent, still not terribly easy to put myself out there or to put out, hey, I'm doing this thing. And at the same time, and Tom, as you said earlier, it's scary and freeing at the same time. It's work to unravel who you are, and who you used to be.
Yeah.
Into who you're becoming.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Write that down. How do you unravel that? Because you get so much built up around it.
Yeah.
So I forget when I first saw this happen. I think it was with me and my first coach, but I use it today still. It's the exercise of what's important to you and making a really well thought out list of what's important to you. I think this helps people get out of their head. Is that a way to say it? About their brand a little bit? And when you write down the things that are important to you, it could be a short list. It could be 12 things in your own language. I think I've given you an example before, Richard. Maybe I'll tell everybody one now for me. What's important to you? And then you start to look at your options in life against this list. Now you're getting aligned again.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets you out of your head and you go, oh, wow, this is important. That's important. So what's important to you? Other people would call it values, although I tend to fall back on the Scout oath. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous.
Yeah.
Making you laugh. It's like, but what's important to you, like to you and in your own language? And one of my clients had put their family was on that list by being close to their parents. That's what I mean by their family. And they decided not to move across country because they went, when in their mind they were going to climb a corporate ladder somewhere. They say, well, maybe I better, you know what? I think I won't take that ladder climbing job. I think I'll take this one closer to my family. Happy ever since, right? So I had this one, what's important to you, just to show you how crazy it can be in a person's own language. I call it the screaming reach value for me. And this is an example too of it. It doesn't have to make any sense to anybody else, just you. So I'm a windsurfer. I haven't windsurfed in a while. It was trying to kill me. The faster I went, the more dangerous it was. But a reach is the fastest point of sail. And on a windsurfer, you feel like a missile when your feet are in the straps and you're hooked in the harness. Boop, boop, boop. So, but that feeling of, oh, this is fun and I could really get hurt,
Yeah.
Well, that's important to me. See, so when 25 years doing this business of mine, I had a few job offers. And each time I go back to my list, I was trying to break out of who am I, right? I go back to my list. Is this really a screaming reach? Am I going to have fun? Is this the kind of fun, scary? It's not. I think I'm doing that now. See what I mean? It's like I got a better fit. So anyway, I think the question is, how do we get out of our stuck place of better mindset? I think going back to what's important to you, comparing your ideas, options, job offers, the calls you make, the informational interviews that you have, and look for the fit there. Then we got the motivation, then we got the productivity, then we got a happier life and so forth.
Yeah. I think there's sort of two things that I'm hearing from both of your answers is, Richard, you're talking about the title and you're in this industry and you are a journalist, right?
Yes.
And really, and I'm sure you do this with your clients, you're not a journalist, you're curious. You're a storyteller, you're an investigator, it's the skills that you have.
Right.
You're not tied to this one profession. You have these different skills. And then Tom, similarly, maybe parallel with that is it's about your values. It's not about the external of the title or the company that we're working for. It should be coming back to you. And one of the things that, I learned later on when I was sort of forced to was I had been making a lot of decisions for the title and the money. And I don't think money is a bad thing. We all need money, whatever, but that was definitely a drive of mine. And it's not necessarily a value of mine. So it was one of those things where I was getting into situations where I was succeeding, but I wasn't aligned to it. And it wasn't meeting the values that I had. And frankly, at that point, I wasn't even thinking about my values. I was just thinking about how do I get to the top of this field, right? And everything was just externally based. And I think it's so common. I think it is so common. And the more that you dig into your work, not that I think that's a bad thing necessarily, but the more that you dig into your work and not hold on to yourself, your values are corporate values. And sometimes those values don't align with who you are. And I've been fortunate that I've worked for a lot of nonprofits that do align with my values. So fortunately that, I lucked out in that regard, but it's really, I think we are validating externally than the internal. And for whatever education you're going to, whether it's, a four-year institution or vocational school or whatever, we're not talking about this. Right. We're learning for another degree or we're learning for the corporate space. And if anybody's listening to this, then it's like, oh my God, I've never thought about this for myself. I think that's more common than not, frankly.
And Meghan and I, Tom, we talk a lot about values and what, knowing what your values are and understanding them and acting from them. And so, in being rooted in those values and being aligned in them and making decisions from that place.
Yeah. I always say your values show up on your calendar. And that's, I think, and if it's on my calendar, it's going to happen. So, I'm also curious too, as you're thinking about forestry, or as I'm thinking about forestry and natural resources, what have you learned from your work in nature that we can apply to ourselves? And I'll give the asterisk on this. Another thing, Richard, we talk about a lot of stuff, but one of the other things that Richard and I talk about is we are not separate from nature. We are nature. Absolutely. But I think our culture has gotten so separate from nature, so separated. And we think of ourselves as other than. And your work
Mhm.
over the years, certainly you're experiencing nature in a very different way. What can we learn from, forestry? What can we learn from natural resources that we maybe aren't applying to our life that we should?
Wow. Oh, wow. I'll tell you, I mean, that's really cool. And thanks for the segue too. But also, thank you for bringing what Richard and I said home to your, and like it's internal. So
Hmm.
nice bringing that to ground. Yeah, I see things in nature and think about how does it apply. I also like to tell stories and use analogies and metaphors to explain things.
Hmm.
I think it's fun and maybe memorable. So I picked up a few from nature. Maybe this is an example of what you're talking about. But so trees, in forestry, we used a tool called an increment borer, and you literally are boring into the tree to see its growth patterns. You've seen rings on a tree. Well, you can do that when the tree is alive, and it helps you prescribe the best things for that forest landscape, whatever. But anyway, trees grow. So there's a people analogy here, right? Trees grow on the edges, the outside of the tree. So every year it lays down an internal layer. We don't have to go into scientific names of the cells, but it lays down a layer of wood to the inside of that ring and a layer of wood to the outside of that ring. And the layer of wood to the inside of the ring stays there. And the layer of the wood to the outside becomes the bark. So the bark is an annual growth ring. You can see the rings in the bark on some species. But the point is the tree grows on the edge, its edge. And people grow on the edges too.
Hmm.
So that's what's an edge, and growing. It's risking things. It's trying something new. And maybe it's taking a baby step in a direction for your career. You don't necessarily have to make the big leap. Maybe you just need to learn a new skill that your corporate office is saying you're not quite, well, let's take a baby step in that direction. Grow at the edges, but you got to grow. And that's where it takes place with some risk. And that's what you're asking about. But
Yeah.
fire is another analogy, and wildfire and controlled burns and how that's natural. Change is natural, you know. But if things build up, sometimes a wildfire happens. It had to happen, unfortunately. Sometimes it's around people,
Hmm.
especially the more and more people live in the wild. It's called the wildland urban interface. It's actually called WUI, wildland urban interface. The more people are there, the more they're in the way of natural. We stopped fires from happening, with good intentions, and now we have buildup, and we have. So fire is a renewal tool. Change for people is a renewal tool,
Hmm.
and nature comes back from that, as for thousands of years without us intervening.
Hmm.
Sometimes we intervene and actually do a small fire on purpose to control fuel buildup and improve the growth of trees. Gosh, nature. Here's one more. Yeah. So one of the first classes in forestry school, and I didn't know I really didn't know what forestry was. I got the merit badge, Richard. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but I agree. I was a suburban kid, and I just liked to be outside.
Yeah.
I play outside. My parents, they just. I was a fourth boy, and you come home when you hear the cowbell. I would be on adventures, the C&O Canal, the railroad track,
Sure.
Potomac River. Anyway, so so forestry school was like, what's forestry? Well, I can work outside. That was the idea. Was the fact that nature abhors a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. And I didn't know how important this would be to me in this profession, organizational development profession, the coaching profession, and the communication profession. So in leadership, communication is a big part of our job. So what that means in nature is that nature is going to reclaim any surface that you leave alone. A parking lot, it will reclaim it. It will grow something there. And with people and organizations, people are going to fill the vacuum too, fast. So a principle of leadership to me is fill the vacuum first. Be way upfront with information. It might be hard. It might be bad news. It might be something you wish you didn't have to say. And there's some things you can't say, yet. But fill the void. That's a communication principle from nature, because nature abhors a vacuum. So do people. So do organizations. They're going to fill it. You might as well try to fill it with the facts first, the truth.
Yeah. perception is reality, right? Like and if you're not
Yeah.
filling that, people will make things up and
Yes.
that
And
becomes the truth.
that's the truth. That's right.
Yeah.
So I actually had a growth job, we were talking about, they put
Hmm.
me in different public information officer
Hmm.
or a paper mill. And they said, Tom, hey, you're a nice guy. You're a little bit too nice because you're going to have to get punched in the nose a little bit. This is going to be
Hmm.
hard as a manager. We know you want to be a manager. You'll be a great one. We're going to put you in a job where you're going to get punched in the nose every day. Oh boy. Let's see. Is this a good idea?
Yeah.
Yeah, because. But anyway, I learned that if I let a news story go or something would happen, an event, it would be filled with other people's stories and facts and information that would be wrong. And then everybody would believe that. And then I had an uphill climb to get the story right,
Hmm.
which we all have this problem. So from nature bores a vacuum, get in there first, tell the truth, and you won't have to climb that hill.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And actually, I was thinking about I love that example. And I think that's beautiful. And I was kind of thinking about as well, I'm in South Florida, so hurricanes are a way of life. And hurricanes are devastating to humans, as we have seen. And it's also necessary for the environment.
Mhm.
And you see all these winds come through and all of this devastation to the beach. And it's like that line from Jurassic Park, like life finds a way. And you can sort of apply that to your life, right? Like nature abhors a vacuum. You may have a layoff, you may have this huge setback. It's not going to last forever. And I'm not trying to diminish
No.
what has happened. I'm not trying to, oh gosh, I said this to someone the other day. It's like emotional bypass. Like I don't want to emotional bypass what has just happened.
Yeah.
But this is a moment in time. And after the fire, it's devastating. After the hurricane, it's devastating. And the next thing you know, there's green, right? And I think the other thing that being in South Florida that has really been a shift for me and not my favorite thing is we're pretty seasonless here. Like it's sunny all the time
Mhm.
and it's pretty either hot, hotter, or hottest throughout the year.
Excellent weather report.
Yeah. And so, that's disorienting. And I say this as someone, it is February and it is 75 degrees and sunny outside. So I am not complaining, but it is disorienting, right? And I think that we need to understand that there are seasons in our life, right? And those seasons, you can't go through winter just because you're done with winter. Like it's not over just because you're tired of it, and spring will come. And that's always something that I try and hold on to, of like, be in the season you're in
Yes.
and embrace it and know that another season is coming. I think it's important to embrace that and move through it the way that you need to. But to your point, nature abhors that vacuum. It will change. It's not going to be like this forever. There's still rain in the desert. You will move through this. And I'm curious, Tom, how did you make this shift in your career?
I guess you're talking about the shift from being in the, natural resources profession,
Mhm.
yeah. So I think I misread the tea leaves a little bit when I was an outdoor kid.
Mhm.
I was all about the outside. Scouts didn't have enough activities for me and my buddies. We made them up. And literally, we get our parents to drop us here and pick us up there 5 days later on the Appalachian Trail, stuff like
Oh,
that.
wow.
We built rafts and went down the Potomac River, and they're like, where do we drop you off and where do we pick you up?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were trying to get us killed, honestly, but actually they unconditionally loved us. But I was an outdoor kid. I loved all that. The reading the tea leaves was, I must need to work outside.
Mhm.
So once I got into the profession and started working, I saw my fascination was with the human dynamics. That's basically it, Megan. So,
Yeah.
and then I started getting promoted in these directions where the rest of my colleagues weren't interested in going. Public speaking, public affairs, solving people problems, training, development is like, yeah, I'm there. Sign me up. That's interesting. So, I mean, they noticed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There was something different about this kid who has this background, but also has these interests. So let's give him a little bit of that. See, they sent me back to school twice. And so then I started getting promoted in, HR. And that was really from the outdoors. It wasn't the being outdoors as much as what I was doing with the other people outdoors.
Mhm.
Building teams, accomplishing stuff together,
Yeah.
solving a problem, getting over hurdles together.
Mhm.
So how I made the transition was that aha season,
Mhm.
and good bosses, good supervisors, good organization, lucky, and then I found myself on a whole new path. And I did go and get more of the body of knowledge I needed for
Mhm.
this new path and followed that up. Long answer to a short question. Never good.
No, I think that's it. I don't think it was very long. And one of the things Richard and I have talked about is I think there is this balance of you do have this skill set, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you should just become a coach, right? There's still other things within that world that you need to hone. I think that's one of the things we see a lot is like, well, I went through this, so I'm going to coach you about it. And it's like,
Oh,
yeah,
quite.
like,
Not quite.
pause.
Yeah.
So,
Not quite the best. Yeah.
yeah,
And that'd be more of a mentoring kind of a role.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love your seasons, bringing that home too. That we all go through seasons in our lives, and that reassessment that has to happen after the hurricane.
Yeah.
There's renewal opportunity there. It's hard to see, really hard to see. I never say to somebody who's going through the hurricane, it'll be fine. And no,
No.
no.
Yeah.
If you want to get punched in the nose, that's a good way to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, we were talking earlier, I grew up in the mid-Atlantic, and so hurricanes were not a thing where I grew up.
Right.
And we did get tropical storms every now and then, but I mean, that's like super rare. So anyway, growing up and seeing people in Florida or the Panhandle or, in places in the US where hurricanes hit, I'd be like, why don't you just leave? Like, I didn't get it. I was like, just go. And what I learned a lot of things. You can't just go. Like, it's not a thing. On a good day, it takes 7 hours from where I am in South Florida to get out of the state. And if everybody's trying to do that, double it, triple it, right? And you're just going up a coast. So anyway,
Yeah.
the very practical part of it. So anyway, the other thing that I didn't know until I experienced it is being in this area when a hurricane comes, seeing community come together in a way that is unbelievable. So when I moved here 3 weeks later, Irma came in, and Irma was devastating to the Caribbean. It was coming in at a 5, literally over Palm Beach County where I live. And I had been here for 3 weeks. I didn't know anybody. And almost all of our neighbors checked in on us. They were like, do you have what you need? We were like, we don't even know what we need, and everything since then has been that embrace of each other. And it almost goes to your point, Richard, of Punxsutawney Phil. It's silly, but it's community. And I think that's such a huge part of, I don't know. I think that's just a huge part that goes overlooked. And we think about it as like our network and how they can, we get into this like corporate speak when it goes back to it's your community, right? And it's so important to nurture that. And it's not about what I can get from you. It's about how can we serve each other. And I think that's such an important thing. And it could be something as silly as getting around a groundhog and saying like winter sucks and let's look at this cute little animal and celebrate in a parking lot, like whatever.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but finding that community and finding where your community is, I guess that was a really long way of saying it, but like figure out who your community is and embrace it, right?
Oh, I still want to riff on that. Can I?
Please. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say this before you riff, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Florida is not my forever home. And it's a really important point for me to say this. Florida is not my forever home. And I have found incredible community. So don't ever let that sort of like stand in the way. Like you can always find your people and always find your community.
Yeah. Same kind of feeling I had living in the Midwest.
Yeah.
It was great. And it was really, really, really cold.
Yeah.
Cold. I could have ever prepared for. No, so community got me excited about that. The thing about living in sort of a city suburban area, I didn't get small towns.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in small towns like you did and like Richard I know did. But this moving around in natural resources, they move you to small towns. And I started to notice something very different and special about small towns. And you know how people from big cities, what they say about small towns very often, right? They don't have a very good restaurant. Everybody knows everybody's business, you know what I mean? There's nothing going on here. Okay.
Yeah.
But what's going on that you don't see in a small town is what you said, Megan, is there's a whole lot of connection in small towns and people look out for each other.
Hmm.
and they want to help each other, and they come to the party when there's an emergency. And that's a chemistry you just don't find every day. So I have this thing for leaders about to treat your team like it's a small town,
Mm.
or your organization like it's a small town. And the acronym is Main Street. Okay. So the first thing you do, and I would move, and I need to get involved in the fabric of the small town. But same with leading teams. You got to get involved in the fabric of the team. So M in Main Street is for mingle, just hang out. Well, Tom, that doesn't sound very productive. I don't get paid to mingle. Yes, you do, actually. That's part of, becoming part of the community, your team. So mingle. A is align with their problems. What are their problems? Try to solve those as high priority as you can. Even the small ones, find out what's getting in their way and help solve that. That makes you part of the community. Every small town I went to, I was a scoutmaster, right, Richard? In this town, I was a firefighter in another town, What does the town need? How do I get part of that? A. So that's a lie. Invite the neighbors over is the I. So they can get to know you, right? They see you in your environment, what's your family, your hobbies. Network is N. And by network, I mean a particular kind of networking, and that's find out how I can connect you to somebody you need or you're looking for. Don't expect anything back. It's not about you. It's about networking to help them. You said that, Megan. Right. And then the street stands for go sightseeing. It's a stretch on the acronym, I admit it.
That's all right.
But go sightseeing, go to them, go to where they work, have them show off what they're doing. And that helps you become part of the fabric of your community as a leader to bring back the community thought to nature in small towns.
Yeah.
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 And it's really getting to know everybody in that small town. I mean, Tom, you worked in the same small town that I grew up in. It's one of those places where everybody knows you.
Yeah.
And so that helps build connections to people. And it helps in times of need, as Megan, you said, when people come together to help each other out. And so when you follow Tom's Main Street analogy, when those tough times come, it's easier for everybody to rally around each other to help everybody recover.
Yeah, right. You're not isolated. Well, thanks for letting me riff on that and that connection to community, Megan, and our shared experience, Richard. That's pretty cool.
I also think it's an important point about leadership as service, and you integrating yourself into a community in an idea of service. I mean, look at the connection the two of you have made, right? And you have given that to Richard. Richard is now giving that to other people. It's beautiful. I mean, that's a really beautiful thing. We can all be leaders in our own way.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Small town leaders. Yeah. And that's where, real leadership happens.
And you don't need to have a title to be a leader.
Right.
Really don't.
Yeah.
No, in fact, some of the biggest title leaders are, not the best leaders. We know that too.
Yeah. I just want to start wrapping up here. And Tom, can you talk about how important it is to have a mentor? Because we've known each other for a long time, and especially over the past couple of years, you've been important to me as a mentor. And you've been important to me in a difficult part of my life, not just professionally, but personally. And you, for me, have been a steadying influence. How, even at, my advanced age, I still have mentors. How important do you see having a mentor at any age?
Thank you. Completely.
Thank you.
Critical, of course. I think I'd like to say too that mentoring, being a mentor, having a mentor, doesn't need to be named that. Can I just say that right away? And nobody has to say that. Doesn't have to be labeled that. Doesn't have to be a corporate mentorship program. It doesn't have to, some of the best studies I've seen on mentoring came out of the U.S. Naval Academy, where they found that mentoring, this is a while ago now, But the less formal the mentoring program was, the better. Informal mentoring actually got better results. Because a formal mentoring program just kind of dies of its weight because of the labels and the expectations. And now I got to do this. And, so I would say to anybody who wants a mentor, just ask somebody for advice that you respect. Ask somebody to help you think something through. And maybe they're a mentor for a week, one conversation, or maybe this happens every 6 weeks or 5 years from now, that kind of thing. But I think that the things mentor can do, and coaches, it's very close, right? It's a very close knot of human service. Coaches, mentors, trainers. But those people have to know which one they're doing when. Yeah. But I think that people to talk to can give you principles that you can apply. I'll come back to principles real quickly if you have time. And they can ask you good questions, as you've been doing. Short, powerful questions to help you sort it out for yourself. But mentors can say, hey, this principle might help you. I learned this way. How does it apply to you? That kind of thing. And there's just no, there's not necessarily a naturally occurring network of people that you talk to this way, is there? For most people who don't kind of go in and do something proactive. You can't exactly talk to your family this way because there's a bunch of dynamics with family and expectations and what they would have done and the history that you have together or whatever. Neighbors, it's just not the same thing. But people who care about you, first of all, Richard, they want to help you. Not all equipped to do it or want to be called a mentor. But ask them for some advice. I like the air analogy. What's your advice, insight, or recommendation about something? Either one of those words. People are so honored to take a minute to do that. And you've got a mentor. Ask them for advice, insight, or recommendation about something. And they're like, sure, yeah. How much? Well, 10 minutes. And they'll give you 2 hours. Yeah, because they just so want to help you. They help you think, and they help you apply principles from their experience. And so principles real quick is, that you have from your life. You don't have to be a mentor or a certified coach to have principles, things that you learn. This was from scouting. So I actually was tossed into a developmental assignment my second year working at a scout camp. Yeah. And I dislocated my shoulder and I was going to be the trail guide. Well, that's like the fighter pilot job of scouting, to be a trail guide. But I couldn't do it. So they said, we want you to create a whole new program, survival skills. And you're going to be survival Tom. And you're going to live in natural environment. You're going to build a shelter and you're going to be filthy and you're going to eat grubs and you're going to show people how to live off the land. Oh boy, pretty cool. Yeah, it's like that job I told you about. But so I started to put together, bring everything you know about survival to your first day at camp. You're not going to build trails. You're going to design the program. I'm 15 years old. You design this program. So I stacked up everything I knew about survival, all the books, I brought them to camp. I was writing notebooks. What am I going to do? Hand a notebook to a kid with a backpack at survival outpost? No. I had to boil it down to principles. They're like the principles of physics. Like a survival principle is always follow water downhill. It eventually leads you to people. That's a principle. You can use it in the desert, not very well. You know that low sounds carry farther in the outdoors than high shrill sounds. Principles, right? You know that all North American flowers are edible. The problem is knowing which ones are native North American flowers. Yeah. So principles don't always apply, but a mentor will give you a principle about something, and then you figure out how to apply it. So you might ask for their principles of what they've learned, see how you can apply it. Mentors, coaches, trainers, support system, find them, but you don't have to name them that.
Got it. I got it. And even though you said that, I still consider you a mentor. So Tom, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. And as I always tell you, I come out of our conversations smarter than I came in.
Thank you, Richard.
Appreciate your time.
It's been a joy, as always. Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Megan.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to talk with you and to learn from you. And I have 2 last questions, one for you, Tom, and then one for Richard. So Tom, how can people find you? if they want to work with you. Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you. And
Yeah.
so I'm in a new season.
Cool.
Back to you. Retirement. Uh, but the mentoring, the career coaching I'm doing is for universities.
Oh, cool.
So if you have a university that wants to enhance their program,
Mhm.
I can be an adjunct for your university. That's how I'm doing coaching today, is it's an adjunct to universities who want to enhance their graduates' success when they go from having their wonderful degree
Mhm.
to the treadmill of applications and
Mhm.
podcasts. That's the way, Megan. Thank you for asking.
Awesome.
Like,
Awesome.
that's
That's so great. Awesome. And Richard,
Yeah.
what was your Eagle Scout project?
It was actually related to trees. And so what I did was I got a bunch of loblolly pine tree seedling. And I spoke to a couple of classes of third graders because they were still at the age where they will listen to you. Okay. So yeah, I think that, and that was one of my first public speaking gigs, engagements. So I just remember these little third graders were wrapped in attention. So I was like, okay, I got a good audience here. Then we went out to behind the elementary school and we planted a couple of the seedlings, and the kids took the other seedlings. They were each given one, and they were to take them home and plant.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're still planting seeds today, Richard.
Hey.
I love
Hey.
that. I
Hey, look
love
at that. Like that.
I look at that. Well, Tom, lovely to meet you. Richard, always a pleasure.
Really enjoyed this one.